Welcome to Straight Talk Vermont with Linda Joy Sullivan. Thank you, NEK-TV, for having us. We have as our featured guest, Cary, who is the Executive Director of the State Commission for Women. And Cary, I'm going to ask you to say hello, introduce yourself, and tell us a little bit about your background. Welcome, Cary.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. So I'm the executive director of the Vermont Commission on Women, and I've been in this job for about 12 years, I think. And before that, I was actually a member of the commission. So just a quick little overview. The Commission on Women is a state agency that provides advice and counsel to the legislative and executive branches on issues concerning women. So we do public education, we do advocacy, we do information and referral. And the commission itself is a group of 16 commissioners who are appointed by the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate Committee on Committees. And so I had been appointed by the Speaker of the House to serve on the commission for a few years. And before that, I worked for Vermont Works for Women, which is a member of our advisory council. And so I was attending meetings in an advisor capacity for a while. So I have been in one role or another with the Commission on Women for quite a long time. And I have to say that moving from being on the commission, which is kind of like being on the board of a nonprofit, to being staff is one of the best transitions that you can make, I think, because you have the advantage of seeing like sort of the big picture, behind the scenes, inner working stuff being a member of the commission. And then you get to the staff and then you see all of the other, like the really nitty gritty inner workings, but you have a good sense of how it all fits together. So I'm pretty
So this
pleased.
is exciting because I definitely want to talk a little bit about that transition. Okay,
Mhm.
because I was very curious. You know, you were a commissioner, you also held other executive director positions for not-for-profits, and the Women's Commission is an independent state organization,
Mhm.
which is entirely different than the not-for-profit. But you're
It
right,
is
it's a
very different. Yeah.
board, and
Mhm.
and one is unique in that it is totally independent while you're quasi-employed by the state as the
We are,
executive
yeah.
director,
Mhm.
but you are still working for an independent entity.
Yeah,
Right,
well,
right.
it's an interesting blend, and it seems a little contradictory, but it works. That we are part of state government. We are so the staff, the three staff who work here, we're employees of the state, and we're kind of like our own agency. We don't answer to the governor, so that's the part that makes us independent. So we
That's
get our
important.
funding from the state, yeah, but and the governor when the governor creates his budget, he includes us and he makes a recommendation, and we work with the administration in all those ways with our budget and how we pay our bills and all that kind of stuff. But we don't. The key thing is that we don't necessarily have to align with the governor on policy issues or on anything else. Um, and we sometimes we will disagree with the administration. That doesn't usually happen. You know, we don't usually like go out and take a strong position against the administration, but it is a little bit different from any other state agency in that we can do that. And if we have a different position, and it gives us the ability to go talk to other parts of state government and other policymakers and say, this is the information that we have that we're here to share with you. It may differ from what you hear from the administration, and that's fine. So we can do that. So that's kind of where it's the difference between being we're independent and we're also a part of state government at the same time.
No, understood. I mean, it
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense. It makes total sense to be an employee of
Yeah.
the of the state, because that's, how you get employed. It's where you get your funding.
Yeah.
You're in the budget. I mean, otherwise you'd be non-existent.
Yeah.
So, but
Exactly.
when it comes to the actual positions, that comes from the commission themselves, working with the executive director, who assists with the policies and the procedures and the formatting and how you go out and speak. I mean,
Mhm.
I know as a commissioner the reliance upon an executive director yourself with such experience is
Mhm.
so vital
Mhm.
to the longevity of the commission itself. And I
Mhm.
don't think that people, the public, and that's why I really wanted you on here, understand what the powers and authorities of this commission is. We have a lot of authority. We
Yeah.
have, and it's there to speak for women issues. Diversity is
Mhm.
key to
Mhm.
what we stand for. So when you went from a commissioner and then you went into the role of more of the authority advisory to the commission itself, you went out there as well speaking with other agencies, other
Mhm.
commissioners across the
Mhm.
state. Can you
Mhm.
tell us about that and how important that is for Vermont to participate
Mhm.
in what's going on across the world?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I tell you, one of the things that really struck me when I first started this job was, and one of the things I loved about it and still love about it, is that I got to make connections and be engaged with a little bit of practically everything. And because, if you try to define what a women's issue is, name me something that's not in some way, right? We're human beings, and so it affects all of us.
Yeah.
But that meant that, particularly when I first started, I worked really hard at going out and trying to meet and make connections with folks from the childcare, early childhood education, from healthcare, from aging, from social services, from the incarcerated women has been a big issue of ours for a long time,
Right.
and we have, as I mentioned before, this advisory council, which is 27 or so organizations that we work with and partner with in various ways, and that they're all kind of working towards our same mission. And yeah, and so that's one of the things that has been really great about this, is that I do a little bit of lots of different things all the time. And it's also really pushed me to think even more broadly about how gender plays into decisions that are made. And that's kind of our key priority right now, is to be the voice that says, don't forget about gender as you're thinking about how how you make your decisions and the impact of your policies. That, how will this affect women? And we're one of the primary voices who are doing that. There's not, unfortunately, not a lot of other voices out there really insisting on, don't forget about gender. So we try to do that. And so that means that sometimes it's very obvious things. So if we're talking about paid family and medical leave, then there's clear connections between women's ability to stay in the workforce, women's ability to keep supporting their families and balance work and families. And there's many more women who are taking primary responsibility for taking care of children and families, and so it has a big impact on them. And one of the major reasons why women overall don't earn as much money as men in Vermont, why we have this gender wage gap, is because of participation in the workforce. Women are more likely to be kind of in and out. They're more likely to work part-time. They're more likely to have different career paths that result in lower, overall lower career earnings, because they're taking care of their families. Um, and then something that maybe like a little bit less obvious, several years ago, the legislature was working on a bill about independent contractors. And they
I
actually,
remember that, Bill, very
oh yeah,
well.
you must have been there, yeah. And so they actually called me and said, can you come in and talk about how this impacts women? And I thought, oh well, I'm gonna have to think about that. That's a new one for me. I have to think about it. But then, of course, when you're thinking about women entrepreneurs, which was something we had done a lot of research about, women starting their own businesses, women are much more likely to be sole proprietors or to work as independent contractors, because it often will give them more flexibility to, take care of family responsibilities and all that. And so when we're thinking about the laws regulating how independent contractors are treated, it's really significant. It's really important to women, because this is a key uh, this is a key choice that some women get to be able to make, to add on. They're not necessarily running a full-time business, but they're doing something that's part-time, that's kind of in addition to the other stuff that they're doing, because they have family responsibilities or those kinds of things. And so if we want to make sure that independent contractors are treated fairly, that they're not taken advantage of, and then that has a big impact on women who are working. So, those just a couple of examples of the way we try to bring that gender lens to everything as much as we can.
And there's also been such a huge transition culturally over the years. So when you're talking about, say, the independent contractors, in the beginning, it was more for your type of profession as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to the gender, and how the gender would come in and say, as a woman, this is something that works
Right.
for me
Yeah.
to keep the whole complement of everything that we do as women and still go out there. I mean, I remember when I was applying for a position that was really breaking into a male dominated area, my
Mm-hmm.
resume only had my initials on it, or I would
Uh-huh.
never have
Uh-huh.
gotten an interview.
Yeah. Yeah.
Under no circumstances would I have gotten an interview. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I
Mm-hmm.
actually did get appointed in one of the positions that I wanted, one of the cases that I wanted, the judge actually came out and said, "Oh, yeah, let's raise the testosterone level here. Let's put a female in." And of
Oh,
course,
yeah.
years
Yeah.
ago,
Yeah.
his intent of saying that was not a horrific thing. He was trying to be
Right.
your future forward looking. I mean, now we wouldn't
Yeah.
want to hear those words, but
Yeah.
what I'm
But no, I
saying
understand.
is
Yeah.
he did it, and he turned around and he just made it happen.
Mm-hmm.
And this was many years ago, but I'm just saying, but at least we had a forward looking judge. But
Mm-hmm.
never would my resume have been picked up if my name was on it. um,
Yeah.
because quite honestly, I think the shock was when I walked in, like, where's the person who actually sent in the resume? Why are you
Right. Oh, wait a minute. Is this the right
but the
person?
whole
Yeah.
change is like what we're doing, what you're doing as the executive director and getting out there. Tell our audience about the other commissions, not just Vermont. Like, how do we blend
Mm.
with them? How do we work with them? How do we stay alive?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, so going back to historically, we were formed in 1964. And this was on the heels of President Kennedy established the Presidential Commission on the Status of Women. And there was kind of a move across all of the states for governors to create their own state versions of this. And a lot of them did. I don't know if all of them did. I think it's possible that all of them might have. I'm not 100% sure about that. But many, many, many state commissions were formed. And we were right there at the beginning. And there are lots of them are not in existence anymore, but quite a few are. So there are there's a lot of state commissions out there. There are also some counts on women and some municipal commissions on women in other places. Like California has probably, maybe a dozen different commissions at different levels of government. Yeah. And Massachusetts also has a bunch of them. And as well as many other states. And some places may just have a municipal or a county commission, but not a statewide commission. So it really varies. But we're a member of an organization called the National Association of Commissions for Women. And so this is a professional organization that brings together many of these commissions at different levels and different levels of government. And so we're able to share experiences with each other. We're able to come together and share resources and support each other. And they have a conference every year, which you and I were fortunate to be able to attend last year, which was really fantastic.
It was
Uh,
fantastic, and it was
and
exciting to go with you and see you
yeah,
present.
yeah,
It was-
yeah. Oh, it
yeah.
was a great experience. And to be able to hear what experiences other commissions are having. So for instance, lots of them don't have any paid staff. They just have the commission. And so it's just a group of volunteers who are trying to affect some change. And then some of them have a whole, giant staff and full complement of people. We have 3 staff, which is pretty good. We have a very strong staff and probably well as a team, and we're kind of an all hands on deck sort of team. We work, and I'm so fortunate to be able to be in that position. And other commissions are doing things a little bit differently because they have a different configuration of staff, or they have different kinds of support, or they have different levels of support from the administration where they are. And so we are able to learn from each other. There was a time, this hasn't happened in a little while, but there was a time when we were having regular in-person meetings with all of the New England commissions on
Ask
women.
me if I
So
love that.
yeah,
I love
I would
that.
love
Yeah.
to see that happen again. I know. And so we used to get together like about once a year in person, and COVID, of course, threw that all out of whack, and we've never really quite gotten back to it since. Um, but that is something I would love to see more of, that, because it's great to have this national collaboration, but then also to have the regional one. And certainly when I started at this job, that was there were very strong relationships there. And I learned so much from the directors at other commissions in New England who had been doing it for a while and could really, help me understand. For instance, I mentioned something about like a board of a nonprofit before, and you pointed out very rightly that it's not the same. There are some similarities, but then trying to sort of navigate that and understand, well, what are the differences? Because I was familiar with the nonprofit world structure, and this is similar, but it's not the same thing. And so kind of, learning to maneuver that, other commission staffs have been very, very helpful with that. So I
Well,
hope we'll
surely.
see more of
Yeah.
that.
Go ahead. Yeah, because the
Yeah.
bottom line is we are more compliance oriented. The not-for-profits have we aren't here to endorse the not-for-profit itself. I mean, we can endorse
Mhm.
what their theory is or what their policy is,
Mhm.
but we
Mhm.
don't want to endorse their financials, how they're spending
Right.
their money. And
Yeah.
so we have to be very careful to keep that independence. But when you say, or when I kind of wanted to start this discussion, we are distinct. We are not
Mhm.
the not for profit. So we are here to turn around and say, what is the women's issue?
Mhm.
How do we turn around and get our message out? And these are resources, public, that you
Mhm.
can go to. These not-for-profits is, here's our list of
Mhm.
resources, but we are not party to their specific not-for-profit
Right.
because
Right.
but we are party to their positions and
Mhm.
policies that we can rightfully so and are charged with saying we want to participate in or not, but just not the structure of their entity
Right.
itself.
Right. It's
I think
completely
that's
different.
the distinction. And that's
Yeah.
what we always want to be careful of, is not crossing that independence line. And I think we do that well.
Mhm.
I do. And I think
Yeah.
that's where
Oh,
you
good.
come,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you're
That's
the
right.
executive director. So,
Yeah.
of course, your commissioners are going to become extremely passionate
Mhm.
about what we want to happen for women, and not just women. I mean, everybody's affected by women's
Mhm.
issues, and so
Yeah.
that's where you come in as the executive director and say, tone it
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Let's think it through, and then the commission gets to vote.
Yeah.
So the decision still rests with the commissioners. And I
Yeah.
want to talk a little bit about our commissioners are appointed. They come with varied backgrounds. They are there because they accept the responsibility. This is like a 4-year position.
It's a
This
4-year
isn't
term.
like,
Yeah.
"Hi, can you do this for 3 months until I, find something else for you to do?" This is
Mhm.
a serious commitment because it takes that long to figure it out,
Mm.
and it
Yeah.
takes that long,
Good way to put it.
okay? I
Yeah.
mean, the types of
Mhm.
issues we're dealing with, it's not going to happen, in 3 months.
Right.
And so we have to deal with the legislature, we have to deal with the administration, we have to deal with the world. And like you said, New England, that was great. When I was part of the uh, legislature and I was the New England legislator for the National League of Women Legislators. I was in charge of New England. And
Mm-hmm.
when we go out there and we meet and we talk, what you learn and bring back is important.
Yeah.
And I think it's important if we can hear from you why you think it's so important for us to participate with others. Because I hear oftentimes, the community will say, oh, well, how much is that going to cost the taxpayers? And it doesn't, it's not a direct charge to a taxpayer.
Right.
And
Right.
so it's important for us to understand what's going on in the entire United States, if not the world, internationally. But what have you found was the most important of the in-person meetings, of course, but the comparisons of what you think are really important from the women commissioners who we meet with personally?
Mm-hmm. Well, the the New England group was able to really focus around some key policy issues. So several years ago, there was this initiative called the New England Women's Policy Initiative that brought together these different commissions, as well as the U.S. Department of Labor Women's Bureau was in there, and some women's foundations from other New England states were part of this too. And so we put on a conference called the Unfinished Agenda. Was the first year that we that's what we called it, and it was in reference to the report that had come from the Presidential Commission on the Status of Women back in the 60s, which talked about inequities and had recommendations for things that should happen. And so we really looked at that together and said, okay, well, what has been done? What has not been done? What do we need to do next? And the focus was on economic security. And so we were able to create some policy recommendations from the point of view of all of New England, so we could work together and think about what are the things that we have in common? What are the things that will really sort of work on a regional level? Because we have all these little states that are trying to sort of do their own thing. And the fact is, in New England, we're all pretty connected, and we have very similar interests, and what happens in one state is going to have an impact on another state. So we had a whole series of policy briefs about that, and we're able to really kind of identify where those common areas were. And then also it gave opportunities for building relationships with people working in different areas. So for instance, there was a professor of economics who, when I first met her, she was working at the University of New Hampshire, and she's now at Dartmouth College, and she really focuses on women's economic issues. And we've had this ongoing relationship with her, as well as other commissions have as well, that we rely on them for research, for survey results, and counsel and advice. And if we didn't have that regional connection, we wouldn't necessarily have that resource. And so, we can find out what's happening in New Hampshire. If we're looking at paid leave policies, for instance, we can see, well, what have they been done in New Hampshire, and what are they doing in Massachusetts, and how that might inform efforts that we make here, for example.
And that whole conversation, having those contacts, allows you and to speak with them for some advice and bring
Yeah.
it back to the commission. And that's why it's so important to be able to not just say, okay, gee, I went and somebody put up a PowerPoint and this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, most likely we could figure that out ourselves. What we want is the conversation,
Yeah,
and we
exactly.
want that continual growth of relationships, because they will come up with solutions that work or some that just don't work,
Right.
right? And the key is we want to share
Mm-hmm.
all of that. Tell us how we can get people in the state of Vermont interested in becoming commissioners.
Oh, great question. We do have a few openings right now. I'm hoping that they will be filled any second now. I've been having ongoing conversations with the appointing authorities. But I think we do our best work when we have a good diversity of perspectives and representation from different points of view and different kinds of people. And so that includes politically, it includes age, it includes, educational backgrounds, the kinds of work that people do, geographic diversity. We have to be very careful. We're not in charge of who gets appointed, but I do have many conversations with those who are doing the appointing saying, please consider that we have a lot of white women from Chittenden County already. We're good. And maybe we
Right.
need,
Mhm.
people from other parts of the state, in particular, the northern and southern parts of the state. So, right now you are our Northeast Kingdom person.
Right.
And wouldn't it be great if there were three of you? That's what I'd rather see that,
Or 10 of us would be absolutely fantastic. No, yes, that's
Yeah,
right. If we right,
yeah.
and we had one whose term is up, and
Yes,
Kelly, right?
yes,
And so
yeah.
her term is up, and so there's room for more.
There's room for more. Yeah.
And I'm hoping that we are going to see more and more people wanting to be a commissioner now that we're coming
Yeah.
out. I mean, we have our meeting coming up in September. We're going to
Mhm.
be identifying what we want to do, how we're going to do it. And so that's
Mhm.
news. And that's the
Mhm.
news that we need to get out there
Mm.
because
Mhm.
I'm not convinced that the people in the state of Vermont really understand
Mhm.
what we do, the authorities we have, and how
Yeah.
we can help.
Yeah.
And I think after September's meeting, of course, I'm putting a lot of pressure on you,
I'm
that
here for
we're going to get
it.
out there. We're going to get out there and
Yeah.
we're going to say, you know what? D- don't just like contact us because we throw up something on Facebook. We
Mhm.
want to get out there with you. And
Mhm.
I'm hoping that that's going to be where everybody's mindset is. And I think it is. I think we've been hearing that
Yeah.
all along
Yeah.
that we want to be out there. How do we become the real voice for our commission?
Mhm.
And that's why I was very pleased that you said you'd come on the show because I think it's important for the community to understand more and more about the independence, the authorities that we have. So if we can get more commissioners, who are across the board, not just in, say, Chittenden County, but just,
Yeah.
across the board, we can work together and we can divide responsibilities and we can have follow up. And it's more that we work in unity, right? I
Mhm.
mean,
Mhm.
and, you have different perspectives, so we're bringing it back to the fellow commissioners and the executive director, and we're all working together. What I found, which was interesting, so the when I look through our statute, we have the authority to appoint the executive director and staff, right? So, which is wonderful. Some of the statutes on different boards and commissions have it written in that there is to be an executive director
Oh yeah.
already in the
We don't
statute.
have that.
And
Yeah.
I was, yeah, well, don't worry, I'm on it. And,
Okay.
so I was thinking, this is like very important that people understand the reason and the need for the executive director of such a powerful commission. And
Mhm.
so, when we go back and we start to say, hey, should we alter some of the statutes? Should we present to the legislature? That is something we may want to consider. So,
Mhm.
I've been looking at
Mhm.
that and it's something that I think we should discuss
Mhm.
because the executive director is crucial to the longevity and the compliance of
Yeah.
the commission. And I think
Mhm.
it's important that that is out there. And I also think that what is important is our commission has a very powerful authority to fundraise
We
that I
do.
locate. Number 7, we'll be
Mhm.
talking about
Yep.
that one
Yep.
in
Yep.
September. Okay, we have that power and authority to go out
Mhm.
there to use for what we would like to accomplish. And I think that has kind of been not really focused on. So that is something that gives us a lot of power as well.
Mhm.
So I think that's, there's a lot of authority in that statute that we as commissioners definitely want now to look at, especially with economic development issues, housing issues, everything
Mhm.
affects, the
Mhm.
women's diversity and the
Yeah.
issues. homelessness, everything that is going on.
Mhm.
So when we come forward when we're finally full commissioners and coming out, we have our complete, what is 16, I think it is that
16
we
would be
need
full,
60,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So if we were at capacity with 16, we are able to diversify ourselves more, right? Right? We become more
Mhm.
diversified and we
Mhm.
can pair up and we can group and we can have more subcommittees. Can you talk a little bit about how we have subcommittees and
Mhm.
how that comes about?
Sure, yeah. So we have every year that we start the fiscal year in September, which is the state's fiscal year, and we start that off with a planning meeting where we look at what are our priorities for this year, and that's where we talk about our committee structure. So we always have committees, and we ask every commissioner to be a member of at least one committee, and they vary from year to year whether they're what they focus on. So currently we have a workforce equity committee and a criminal legal system committee and a reproductive justice and women's health committee. And we have our meeting next week, our planning meeting. We may end up with the same committees. We may change those committees, but um, they're the ones who are focusing on kind of what we've identified as our major priorities at any given time. So for instance, incarcerated women has been something that's been a perpetual interest of ours. We have been in the mix of advocating for women who are incarcerated and trying to make things better for them, basically. And so right now there's an ongoing project. It's been going on for quite a number of years to build a new women's prison in Vermont because the one that we currently have is terrible. It's physically falling apart and it doesn't serve people well, and it's not a healthy, and it's not a physically healthy place or an emotionally, mentally healthy place for people to be. And so the state is recognizing that and is working on building a new one. So the but one of the things that we've been trying to keep forefront there is that when you're making decisions about what kind of building, what kind of programming, what kind of structure in general, you need to listen to the people who are most impacted by those decisions that you're going to make. And so we're working really hard. We're not the only ones doing this, but we've kind of taken it on ourselves as we're going to really focus on what currently incarcerated women are experiencing and what input they might have into that whole process. Formerly incarcerated women and families, and we're also going to be talking to staff who work in the system. And so we have this committee that's focusing on how are we going to be doing that. And so, for instance, in the past year, we started scheduling regular visits to the Chittenden Regional Correctional Facility and every monthly visits. So we go, some combination of staff and commissioners goes, and we just kind of have an open conversation with the women who are there, and they just tell us what they're concerned about. We ask them to be thinking about what would you want in a new prison, in a new facility. But many of them, it turns out, are not going to be there for that long. It's very quick turnover on them for the most part. People come in and out, and so a lot of them tell us, well, I don't know what a new facility 10 years down the road isn't that interesting to me, but let me tell you about what's happening right now and some problems. So we've been able to kind of surface some things that we've been able to help with, small things. I'm kind of going off the committee thing. Is that
No,
okay?
keep
Okay.
going.
So one concern came up was people said they didn't have access to the handbook of all the rules in the prison, which there are a lot, as you might expect, a lot of very, very specific rules and regulations that have to be followed. And women were telling us we don't physically have the handbook. We haven't seen all these rules, and so we're getting written up for violating things that we didn't even know about. And when we talked to the prison staff about that, they said, "Oh yeah, it's a problem. We don't have the budget for the handbooks." And we're working on upgrading it, and we're hoping in the future we'll be able to do this. They're working on it, and they recognize this as a concern, but they didn't really have a way to deal with it. So we said, well, how about we just print some out for you? And we took some of our budget and we printed a whole bunch of or we had them printed through the state printing
Sure.
system. And because we had some budget for that, we were able to provide copies for everybody in the building. So now they have that. And they're still working on their own process long term, but they're going to update it and they're going to, they're going to take care of it longer term. But we were able to step in, just a tiny little thing that we could do. It has a little bit of an impact, but we're trying to, be responsive. But at any rate, that's just an example of the kind of thing that the committees may be working on. And so we'll.
And to take that even further, the committee itself looked through some of the compliance issues and what was going on, and they brought that back to the commission and put together a document to which, as we're charged, to advise or start a discussion with the
Yes.
administration. And we've done that.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of issues
Uh-huh.
going on, and we're starting that
Yeah.
communication. So this doesn't just, it's not to be taken lightly that, hey, here's what we did. We printed out the most important document for them to
Yeah.
start with.
Yeah.
Okay. But they need a source.
Yeah.
Yes, it can be changed and it may be out of date, but at least the law is there and the
Yeah. So
compliance is there. And so they
Yeah.
have a starting
Mhm.
ground, right? A foundation. And that is important. So it's not just that we say, okay, look what we identified. We then take it as
Yeah, we try
commissioners,
to do
okay, and we
something.
discuss it and we say, how do we fix
Mhm.
this?
Mhm.
Who do we talk to? And based on our authorities in the statute, we are there to go and
Mhm.
advise the administration or the legislature or whoever and go out there. And we did it.
Yeah.
And that's what we will continue to do. So it's not like we just start and then
Right.
say, check that one
Oh,
off.
right.
No, this is an ongoing
Ongoing.
process. And that's why I said 4 years is
Mhm.
important. That's a term that you're willing to commit. It's not just a title. Oh, hi, I'm a commissioner, therefore,
Mhm.
look at
Mhm.
me. This is
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a good commitment of work and it's always enlightening to work with such wonderful women.
Yeah. I know. It's so inspiring.
It's just always,
Yeah.
this is who we are. The bond of,
Yeah.
women is so important because we all come from different generations, we all come from different backgrounds, but we always experience something in common.
Mhm.
And so
Mhm.
if we share it, we can figure out, how it best serves now. I mean, where the age differences is important,
Mhm.
backgrounds are important. But so
Mhm.
now you are there, and we also have the commission chooses a chair,
Mhm.
right? So
Right. Every
can
2
you
years, the
tell
chair is
us a
elected.
little
Mhm.
bit about the distinction between the chair of the commission and the executive director for the commission?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So that at the most fundamental level, I, as the executive director, and the other staff, we work for the commission. The group of 16 commissioners, that's the body, that's the commission. You all are the ones who decide what the direction is, what we're going to work on, how we're going to do it, and you give us our instructions. And so we are. It doesn't mean that you are telling us every move of every day to make, right? But
Yeah, we
that's what
don't
we're.
do the internal operations, right? We
Yeah,
are there.
exactly. Yeah. And so the chair of the commission is the leader of that body. And so she's the one who's setting the agenda. She does it, in collaboration with staff and with other commissioners. And she's the one who's appointing the chairs of committees and that kind of thing. And she's one of the public figureheads of the commission, although lots of other commissioners take that role at various times too. And so the way I picture it is that the chair of the commission and the commission itself are they're ones out there sort of setting the direction and the long-term, the vision. And then I am figuring out how to carry that out in practical terms,
Sure.
So for instance, you mentioned about this memo that the committee had come up with. It was actually the Reproductive Justice Committee kind of worked with the Criminal Legal System Committee to look at access to menstrual supplies in the facility, and saw that it was a little bit inconsistent. It was a little unclear. Some people felt like, oh, they had no problem. Some people weren't sure what kind of access they had. At any rate, so that committee pulled together a memo. They did a lot of research on best practices, what other states are doing, what other policies other states have to make sure that there is, real access, that women don't have to spend a lot of their own money buying tampons themselves, and put together this really comprehensive memo that then we submitted to the Department of Corrections. And so then there's staff at the Department of Corrections and staff at the Commission on Women, and now we're talking to each other about possible policies. And this was done very collaboratively with them, so it wasn't like we came to them and said, we think you have a problem and here's how you should fix it. Came out of collaborative conversations between the staff, so that we could say, here, we've done some research and here's some recommendations that we have, and we're happy to help you with more of it. And they responded, said, this is really great. Here's a draft of a policy that we're working on. Let's, we can talk back and forth with each other and develop something that works well. So that's where the commission is the one saying, we really need to address this issue about access to menstrual supplies and make sure that it's equitable and working well. And then the staff kind of can get down in the weeds and get that done, figure out how to get that done.
And we were able to identify what was missing in the state of Vermont as well. And then we were able to start that discussion. And you said it spot on, collaborative. I mean, nobody's here, stamping their feet in the ground. This isn't like a political election race. This is like, we need to work together, and we need to share as much of our resources and our knowledge as we possibly can for the benefit of the people. And I am comfortable saying that since I was appointed to commission, I see that. I see that ground. I see that everybody, all the commissions take it seriously, that we want what's best for the people in the state of Vermont. This isn't a political race. Everybody's going to come in with their political positions, but who cares? That's not the issue. That's good. You got your blend. And so nobody cares about that. That's not what the commissioners are doing. Right. The commissioners they may be driven by the area of their passion, and that's good too. But the actual work, the legal documentation, the communications are not that way. It's factual.
Yeah, that's really
evidence-based, and that's important. So we have our meetings. Are they open to the public?
They are open to the public. Yes. Anyone.
And how does the community find out? How are they noticed? Like, hey,
they're warned, as all public meetings are warned, which means they're posted somewhere official. I don't even know exactly how, but it's on our website, and we have a newsletter that goes out regularly, and we include links and information about our meetings. So anybody can go and look at our website and see what the schedule of our meetings are. We this year we are doing most of our meetings remotely by Zoom. We have one meeting in September and one meeting in June that are in person, and the rest, the monthly meetings in between those, are all on Zoom in the evening. And so anybody can log in and join into those.
How will we, I'm hoping that we will try to figure out how to make that even more public, because to get us more visibility, so that people can, and they are recorded, correct? So that people can go and listen afterwards, they're not recorded?
No, they're not recorded, but we do have minutes, so you can go and read the minutes and see what happened. Yeah.
Okay. And they can see the agenda, correct? That's up on our website. When we have somebody who is retained by your office who does marketing and correct for the commission, is that correct?
Right? Yes, we have.
So there are different ways.
Outreach coordinator, So she.
And I'm wondering if And I'm wondering if our advisory council, and I just don't know, when they get our newsletter, hopefully they're sharing it
Oh
with
yeah.
their
Hmm.
people. So it's out
Hmm.
there. But I do know that I have been hearing from women that are saying, how do we get more involved? How do we
Oh,
know
good.
what's going on? And
Yeah.
so
Okay.
we want to be able, I'm coming to you as the executive director saying,
Hmm.
keep that up here
Yeah.
because there's a request of how do we, get ourselves involved, but I just don't know the answer. And that's why I wanted you on here so that we can
Hmm.
at least say, hey, this is something we should discuss. And we
Yeah.
have been going around, and correct me if I'm misstating this, we've been going across the state of Vermont where we do these listening sessions right now,
Hmm. Hmm.
correct? And
Yeah.
how does that get in play? How does that happen?
Well, we've done different versions of this over the years. We several years ago we had a whole initiative we called the Listening Project, and so we had a series of forums around the state. We also did a really comprehensive survey that was both in a hard copy and online, and we got like 2,000 some responses to that, and we were able to publish a whole report of our findings from that. And then a couple of years ago, we did a more sort of scaled down version of that, where we held our public meetings in different parts of the state and combined it, included like a public forum, a listening session in each of those meetings. And so, for instance, we went to Newport and we had our in-person meeting there, and we opened it up to folks from Newport. When we invited all kinds of different organizations, we put notices in the paper, to people who would know it was public, and lots of people came in person, lots of people came online, because our meetings are always hybrid if they're in person, so people can access them that way. And then this past year, we decided we were going to go do some follow-up visits. So we went back to Bennington. And as you know, you're involved in working on planning another one to go back to the Northeast Kingdom to try to
Right.
continue some of those conversations about what are the issues that you're seeing here? What are the ways that we can be supportive? How can we work together? How can we be a resource? How can we get folks connected to each other as well? So we will be doing that, and it's we're always trying to find ways to kind of expand that public access, whether it's people coming to our meetings or joining committees. We have had people who are members of our committees who are not commissioners, and that can definitely happen, or to join as advisors, and people to participate in our events, but also share the word, share our newsletters, that kind of thing. So there are one of the things that has happened sometimes when we do these visits into different parts of the state is we hear about things that are going on that we didn't know about, and we learn about when we make new partnerships and we make new connections. In Bennington, we made a connection with this group called ACT, and one of the things they do is what they call these period packing parties, where they have gatherings of folks and they put together bags of menstrual supplies, little brown paper bags that are then distributed free all around the community for people who otherwise don't have access to them. And so that's something that we're now able to have some conversations about. Can we do something similar in other parts of the state? And then in our memo to the Department of Corrections about access to menstrual supplies definitely was connected to that kind of, this is something we really need to look at, and menstrual equity in general. And so we can look at that kind of direct service providing supplies to people. We can look at policy decisions within the state. We can also look at legislation. So for instance, the state removed the sales tax on menstrual supplies a few years ago, and also then passed a law requiring them to be in schools. So that's just an example of like different ways to approach one kind of issue through partnerships and through policy, through legislation. And again, I want to field here. You're asking
No,
me
you
about
could keep
getting
doing that.
people
That's
involved.
the point. The
Sorry.
point is for you're the guest, you're the person with the
Yeah.
knowledge, and you're the person I want to take it and tell the community about what's really going on. I don't want it to be a
Mhm.
narrow yes or no. I mean, we're not
Yeah.
doing like a deposition here, right? We want the story to come out. So we talked a
Yeah.
little bit about how we work with the administration. We issued memos, et cetera. How about with the legislature itself? I know we go to the Women's Caucus, et cetera, but can you
Mhm.
tell us a little bit about how we follow bills? Who does
Mhm.
this? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we we work, like, as you said, closely with the Women's Caucus. So that's a group of women legislators who are, it varies from year to year what they're working on and what their priorities are, but we partner really closely with them. And we provide testimony in different committees depending on the issue. And so that could be, as I was saying, the independent contractors one year, and then more recently we worked really hard on trying to get rid of child marriage, change the law about children
I
being able to get
remember
married
that
in
as
Vermont.
well. I was in the
Yep,
legislature during that too.
yep,
I remember.
yep, made that change. And that was something we worked with the Women's Caucus on as well. And minimum wage, that was a really interesting one when the minimum wage was raised. This is several years ago. But again, when we discussed it internally in the commission, all kinds of issues were surfaced beyond more money for people is good, right? That's sort of the surface level. Sure, people should get paid more because more money is good. But it's actually so much more complicated than that. There's a whole issue about the benefits cliff. So if you're receiving, SNAP benefits or child care assistance, and you get a raise at work and your income goes up just a little bit, but it's enough that you lose your child care financial assistance, then you're actually worse off financially potentially. And so things like that. And we really and we had very in-depth conversations about that. It was really wonderful, actually. It was a great example of how when you get a variety of viewpoints and perspectives in a group, you can surface all kinds of issues that might not have otherwise been thought about. So then we could go, when I would testify to the legislature, I didn't go in and say, we think you should raise the minimum wage. I would go in and say, here's how this can impact women and families. Here are things that you should consider. And here's how, there are more women working at minimum wage jobs. So that's an issue. But then there's also more women who are on public assistance, and there's all these things to consider. So our role when we go to the legislature, we're providing information and giving them resources, giving them research, giving them statistics, facts, and figures to understand how what they're working on is potentially going to impact the women in Vermont. And we try to come at it always from that angle of what might not be considered by other people, what might not be sort of um, the obvious things that people are thinking about. And so we do that on a wide range of issues. And we also have worked a lot on developing legislation, and we don't draft it ourselves and submit it, but we've been part of lots of coalitions that have come together to try to figure out what kind of suggestions to make. So several years ago, there was a really comprehensive change to the sexual harassment laws made that really strengthened protections for people. And we were a big part of doing kind of some of that behind the scenes work of researching what other states are doing, looking at best practices, being able to provide some of that information to the legislators, who then actually, were the ones who made a bill out of it.
You've said two things that are very important that I think the community needs to understand. We were behind the scenes doing the research. We're not lobbyists.
Right.
And so that was very important that the community understands.
Yeah.
Research, that's what our charge is. Go out there and then give advice. Okay. And that's what we
Mhm.
do. We don't lobby, but we definitely participate in the
Right.
understanding. And the benefits cliff is quite complex. I know I worked on that for many years and I
Mhm.
still am looking at the benefits cliff. I
Yeah.
think that is something that we need to always keep at the forefront of our
Yeah.
discussions
Mhm.
because the impact that has, it affects the entire state of
Yeah.
Vermont, so
Mhm.
it's not just the person who is the recipient of a specific benefit. It's far more complex complex than that. It's not as simple as, well, they got it for, a year, they should go get a job. That's not
Mhm.
how the benefits cliff actually forces people to live or not live properly within the state of Vermont. Okay, so and when I use the word properly, I don't mean it's an assigned rule. I mean it's a
Yeah,
matter of life or death.
yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
and how they live. And
yeah.
so we want to keep everybody healthy. We want to keep everybody moving forward, and we want to figure it out. So, and there's a lot of different popularities out there. So we need to look at it. But what you said was the most important, that we do the behind the scenes research.
Mhm.
Okay. And that is very important. So we're coming to the end, and I want to let you take the last few minutes to say what you would like to say. And I want to thank you so much for taking on such a responsible role as the executive director of a very powerful commission and an important commission. So let the community hear what you want them to hear for the next few seconds.
Okay, well, thank you. And I want to thank you for having me here and giving me a chance to talk about it. And even more importantly, I want to thank you for being a member of the commission and doing this work um, right alongside us, because it doesn't happen. I have nothing to do if it isn't for you all, the commissioners who are making it happen. Yeah. So I guess I would just say that I encourage people to get involved, to sign up for our newsletter, to follow the work that we're doing, as well as to attend our meetings if they would like to, and to talk to the commissioners that are in their part of the state in particular. So if there are folks in the Northeast Kingdom who are watching this right now and thinking, well, I am having a lot of trouble with housing, or I really see something unfair that's happening in with access to transportation, or I don't know what, that they know that you are someone that they can call and say, here's what I'm thinking about, here's what I'm concerned with. And that we can then, this is absolutely crucial for us, is to be able to know what's really affecting people directly in their lives in Vermont, and then we can take that back to affect policy change. We have folks who call us on our information and referral service when they have problems that they can't get solved through 211 or some other easy place. And through that, we can help people with get access to the resources that they need, but we also can see overall what's kind of some of the themes are, like, people being sexually harassed at work and how employers are responding to this and what resources are needed. So we have our Workplaces for All website that's trying to provide resources for employers and employees. And a lot of that is based on what we hear directly from people who are telling us what they're experiencing and what they need. So I think that would be my call to action here, is reach out to us and share your thoughts with us, and we'll take them on.
This is great. So, I'm going to request that you come back after our September meeting
Oh yeah.
and we fill everybody in and let them know what actions that are going to happen and
Mm-hmm.
what comes out of that meeting. And we are going to work aggressively together to do everything you said. So I think it's wonderful. I want to thank you, Cary Brown, our executive director. This is wonderful. I want to thank NEK-TV for happening today, allowing this to take place. And welcome to Straight Talk Vermont with Linda Joy Sullivan. Please watch this show, and we will be back Monday. Thank you, and have a
Thank
wonderful
you.
week.